Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? I tend to have a low voice sometimes. It's been one of my downfalls when I do presentations, even at school. So I always get low marks when it comes to voice. So please bear with me. I can't really change that. Today, my name is Queen, as I mentioned, and the last name is Umeana. So I'm from Nigeria originally, but I grew up here. Currently, I am at Eastern Michigan University, and I'm doing my doctoral there. I am in the College of Technology and Engineering Management. And I'm so glad that Pete called me to do this presentation. This presentation was done, I think, a year or 2 years ago, I think. And I've never had the chance to present it in a capacity as this. It's always been in a confined place with my chair. So I'm glad to be able to present it to you guys here today. Can you guys hear me fine? Is that okay? Can you guys hear me? Let me try to get here. Okay, so basically the study here is to find out wetlands, the loss of wetlands in the state of Michigan. And, Jesus, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me fine? If you can't hear me, okay, there you go. Okay, good. So basically, it's raster model and wetland assessment. And what I was trying to do was to find out the loss of wetlands in the state of Michigan. And here, in order to do that, certain calculations were made and raster modeling restoration calculation was performed. And in order to do that, certain counties in the state of Michigan were selected in certain locations. I did not select the whole locations of Michigan, but certain areas were selected. You will see that further on in the presentation. So here, just to give you guys a brief introduction on wetlands in the state of Michigan. In the early 19th century, settlers in the Midwest Michigan changed the landscape significantly and resulted in conversations of wetlands. So basically, in the early 19th centuries, the notion of wetlands became a topic, and a lot of farmers were talking about wetlands and trying to figure out what is this notion of wetlands and how can we utilize it. And back then, they thought that wetland was more of a scenic view. You know, it was very landscape, very leveled, and it was more of a this is a very nice scenic view, you know, don't touch it, don't mess with it. But then as the time progressed, they started finding out that, wait a minute, we can use this for harvesting, we can use this for farming. So continuation, well, let me go back again. Let me go back here. As you can see, they said that wetlands, in terms of recreation, it became a recreation for a lot of hunters and hikers and photographers and things like that. So they use it a lot for scenic views and more of a calmness, I guess, if I can say that. And then later on in the 20th century, people started realizing that, wait a minute, we can use this wetland for a lot of things. And one of the main things was farming. So as it went on, in the 18th century, wetlands were highly valued by the Europeans, naturalists and artists who acknowledged it, again, as a beautifying landscape. But then in the 19th century, American pioneers searched for farmlands, view wetlands as infested wasteland, and therefore became a good nor farming for human use and others. And that's just one of the literature reviews that I used. There's several ones that I've used to do this research. In continuation, farmers recognized three things that wetland became a value as of. Negative attitude towards wetlands slowly changed. They started seeing it as a significant as opposed to a negative. Information became accessible as far as wetland was concerned, and then the roles of wetlands became more apparent. So one of the things is that the solution for high rate of wetland losses became a study. And back when I first was introduced to this, I believe was state of Michigan State University was the one that was doing this study. That's how I was introduced to it. Back then, I think I was in geological engineering as an undergrad or so, and one of the things I was introduced to GIS. And from that notion, we were doing some remodeling of classification and I was introduced to them. That's how I became introduced to the project, and then decided to do my own. So in continuation of that, sorry about that. So again, Michigan State currently at the time was conducting with Wetland Restoration project, which is, I believe it was located on Mount Hope. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that area. On the right-hand side, you will see it, and that's the picture right there at the time. And parts of the objective is to develop pattern matrix for each class for both the DOQQ and the landscape from GPS points values. So this here was my objective, and here was when I started doing and trying to find out the model. I'm using the raster model to classify the wetlands in the counties. And the counties that I chose, as you can see there, are, these are Native American Indians, so I'm not good in pronunciations of them. But these are the counties that were selected in the Upper Peninsula to use in my classification. And then in the Lower Peninsula, those counties such as Huron and Salic, I believe it was called, Lapeer area on the lower right-hand corner are the selections of the counties that I chose. I don't know, can you guys see that at all? Can you guys see the names at all? Okay, so those are the counties that were chosen for my restoration calculation model. And here's a literature review. I'm not going to go too much in depth into that. Duck Unlimited is one of the biggest companies out here that I spoke with, and also did some literature reviews that they've done just to find out some more about restorations and wetland usage in the state of Michigan. In continuation, these are some of the literature reviews as well, but I'm going to get to the methodology here. Conditions of wetland causes change. The increase of land reconstruction due to new homes were also prevalent now. Commercial buildings were being built, industrial buildings were being built, institutions were being built, which are part of what was degrading the wetland. These are negative connotations to the notion of wetlands. However, human activity caused degradation and loss, in turn changed water quality, flow rate, pollutant input, and species compositions. In continuation to that, other things that were also causing was hydraulic alterations. Those are also other things that were becoming a factor to wetlands. So here is where the methodology came into play. In order for me to be able to find out the loss of wetland, this is the classification method here. So basically, what I used to do that was the land use lands cover of 1800, as well as the 2000 at the time. And as you can see here, sorry about the point. As you can see here, these were the old values, and in turn, I needed to change this value so that I could reclassify it to make it to a new value, which is the value that I'm going to use to do my calculation. Okay, so this is for the 1800, and the other one is for the 2000. So here at the top are the values of what they represented. Okay. So for example, 2 represented mixed conifers and different type of wetlands. For example, 4 represented hardwood, 5 represented shrubs and marsh and emerging marshes and riparian. And then here, the land use land cover 1800 classified by type by that field table, and these are the numbers here. And the same thing applies for 1800, so the same process applies. And as you guys can see at the bottom there, for the 1800 not wetlands, classified by 11 field tables. So I'm using the same field to classify both. And then the same thing goes pretty much for 2000. However, in 2006 was the wetland classification field. So therefore, these are the different type of wetlands. There we have the deciduous, conifers and mixed forests, as well as lowland shrubs, emergence and mixed non-forest lands, mixed non-forest wetlands, excuse me. And in the 2000, we used the Anderson Level 1 field table to do the classification, okay? And the same process goes with the 2000 not wetlands. So we have wetlands for 1800, and we have not wetlands for 1800, as well as for 2000, and the same thing applied. So here are pretty much the data that I used, the software that I used to do my my manipulation. Wetland raster models was selected in the counties and were produced, and land covers mapped by DNR. At the time, I was working for the state of Michigan, so I was able to get access to the data. Thank God for that. And then also what I did was, after the classification was done, what I did was I compared my result to National Wetland Inventory. They sent me a CD, so that way I can be able to say, okay, well, let me see the result that I got. Was it comparable to what they had? And then also, in addition to that, I also compared correlation to see if there's any correlation between my result with Google Map. And you guys will see that later on, just to kind of see if I was on the right track. So here, I already gave you guys a pretty much analysis of the county. There were 24 selected counties that I chose, and the names at the bottom are those counties there, the ones in the Upper Peninsula as well as in the Lower Peninsula. So here are the selected counties illustrated here. And then this is the model that I chose. So what I did was, classification of the wetland, 1800 and 2000. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, I used the Legend 11 field for the 1800 and Anson 1 for the 2000. And then here's the classification. So what happened was, I think it's on the next slide. What happened was those numbers representing those type of wetlands were reclassified into a sub-number. So for example, we have those 2, 3, 4 were classified to, say, for example, 5. And all those land were one land. So that way you can be able to see that on that field. So here is the original 1800 cover types as it was, not reclassified yet, just for you guys to see what it looks like. And then here it is for 2000. So all this is going to be changed once the reclassification is done. So as I mentioned earlier, here are the different number representation. So 2 is conifers, 3 is hardwood, 5 is marsh, wet prairie, and 6 is the buck. So then all this wetland value became 3. You guys getting it? And the same thing goes for the 2000 as well, excuse me. And the same thing for not wetlands are maple forest, outcrops, northern hardwood, hickory, and then the oak forest became 4. Excuse me. And then as far as the 2000 land use land cover is concerned, the wetland value for 6 became 5. And then for the not wetland values, it became 7. So now in combination, 1800 wetlands is 3 and not wetlands are 4. And then for 2000, the wetland, is 5 and not wetland became 7. So now this is what the reclassification looks like. So things have moved a little bit here. And as you guys can see, that's the legend there, pretty much kind of displaying what it looks like. And then this is just some of the processes that it involved. It took several processes to get to this point. I'm not going to indate you guys with so many of the processes, but just to kind of give you an overview of what it looked like. So here is the spatial analysis calculation model that I used in designing the expression. Is an algorithm map algebra expression. And the reclassification underscore 1800 dash reclassification underscore 1800 plus reclassification of 2000. One thing that you have to understand about this calculation is if you forever, say you move the underscore and you make it as a dash, it will totally give you a different output. So that's one thing that you have to really keep in mind when you're doing this calculation, is that you have to really have a focus and pay attention. Because if you miss it, it will give you a whole different output. So that's one thing that I had to do over and over when I was trying to find out my algorithm. So here is the results that I got from the algebra calculation. And here, as a result outcome, the set of combination values were as follows. So the 8 became the unchanged, the 10 became the lost, the 9 became gained, and the 11 is supposed to be inhabited, not uninhabited. That was my own typo, so forgive me for that. It's supposed to say inhabited wetlands, not wetlands, excuse me. So here's the calculation at the bottom there, and that's just the Excel spreadsheet output. And those, what I was doing here was to find out the total in acreage. So that's the total acreage, which is what we're trying to figure out in output. And here, in order to do the calculation, if you guys can see up there, the cell size times the cell size times the count, and the total area is what gave us the acreage total. Okay. And of course, this is the output diagram here. And again, that's supposed to be the inhabited wetland. And as you can see, those dark areas that you see up there are the loss of wetlands that occurred in those 4 different locations. I wish I could use my pointer, but I can't. I don't know how to use this. But okay, I used it. So this, like this areas right here that you guys see right there, see all this, like you can see predominantly where all the, most of the lost wetlands has occurred. Like all these locations right here, or right here, down here, as well here in these counties here. And what I'm gonna do is once I, I'm gonna look at the NWI data set that they gave me and compare that with this and see if my output have any kind of correlation with what they have. Here, as wetlands are a constant breathing space for plants and animals, preserving the wetland increases the health of our ecosystem, of course. So that's just there. While the project identified variables that indicated assessment concerns, it does not attempt to cover all the underlying causes, of course, nor answer all the questions that we have out there. So therefore, these conditions exist and adhere to what we can do and can be done in the future as far as wetland is concerned. I'm sure this has changed by now. I'm sure the result that I got here are, a couple of years now, but now, which I'm not quite sure because I haven't done an update on it, but I'm sure things have changed a little bit with so much increase of commercial buildings being built. I'm sure things have changed. So again, this is the National Wetland Inventory map that was sent to me, and I did my comparison, and the type existed in 1800, is not in existence in 2000, and losses have been graded in the South and East Lower District in Michigan in comparison to the National Wetland Inventory map. And basically what I did here was trying to divide the quadrants up in different sections so that it can be viewable. And this is the DOQQ model data set that I was using here. As you guys can see, as I mentioned earlier, the model resulted image with Google satellite imagery depicting areas of lost wetlands. And here, this is the Google map here. And if you can see, even though this is on a larger scale, if you can see where the loss of wetland acreage has occurred. It is very similar if you look at the map. Just like right here in Lenoir County, if you look at it right here, in comparison to Google map, you can see the loss of wetlands there as well. And the same thing goes with the maps at the bottom as well. Well, majority here, all right here, in these counties, and right here. The same thing goes here. This is Schoolcraft County, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, it is. And then this is, excuse me. And this here is by the thumb. And you can see, and it kind of shows that the raster calculation showed a significant result in terms of loss to wetlands. and here is in Sand Lake in Huron County, and so this is where predominantly all the wetlands are lost. And as you can see on the Google map as well, it's showing the same depiction. And the same thing goes here as well. You just can see a little bit here, here. The same thing goes here and here. And this is the Southwest District location. And although GIS application has its drawback, of course, the data is not loading correctly with some of the things that I ran into, having to do the paper, do the reruns of the calculations over and over to get the optimal result was some of the limitations that I faced. However, at the end, it produced the outcome that I didn't quite expect, but it produced a decent outcome in terms that I was able to compare with NWI as well as Google. It kind of gave it a conclusion, formative result. So I was very pleased at what I saw at the end of the day. So that's pretty much it. These are some of my references that I used here. And these are some of the people that helped me with the processes and to make sure that the data came out well. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. There's a video that when I went out to the field, there was a video that was collected by a guy by the name of Mr. Champagne. He was a naturalist, environmentalist, and he was one of my sources that I talked to. I wish I could give you guys the video. I don't know if I have enough time, but all this project was kind of dedicated to him and a colleague of mine who has passed on now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, sir.
What was the source for your that covered data sets? So you mentioned you had 1,800 and 2,000.
Yes. Yes.
So where did you get those from?
State of Michigan.
Was that, you know, if that was the, where it was produced, whether it was the LCD or it was a state of Michigan data?
I believe it was it's the state of Michigan data layer, because at the time I was working at DNR, and again, one of the main contact person was Marshall Straw, who was also my former boss. So I worked under him, and he was able to really direct me to that data set. We looked a little bit. At the end of the day, he was able to give me the data set that I needed. So I was glad about that. Yeah. Go ahead, Ashley.
Is your sense that most of the wetland loss was to agricultural fields or urban development, or?
I think it's a combination of all of it together, because the fact of commercial buildings, I mean, this is a land that at first it was mostly seen as a scenic view. It was supposed to be something beautiful. You're not supposed to touch it. And then once they realized, wait a minute, we can grow things here to nurture us, to give us health, then why not use it for that purpose? So that's pretty much what I believe happened in terms of depletion. People were using it for different reasons and resources. So I think that's what contributed to the loss of it. Yeah. And I'm sure it's lost more now in 2017. So. Any other questions? Go ahead, ma'am.
When you use the term inhabited and uninhabited, what
The-
are you referring to?
The uninhabited was actually a typo. It's supposed to be inhabited, which is the regular.
By wildlife, by people?
Well, no, by not only just by wildlife, but mostly by people, because they were the most ones that were messing with the nature of things.
So those areas.
We're just
comparatively,
left.
You're saying that they were developed.
Yes, and not being meshed with. Yeah. No problem.